stakeholders to join in this conversation with us about the I-5 Rose Quarter project. I have our technical team here. If you all would share our slide deck, we're going to jump in. Thank you to those, if we do have those from the public who joined this meeting today as well. I can't believe we're at meeting 26. Next slide. That's okay. Technology is wonderful when it works.
Right.
You all who are in the virtual space, if you're needing help with technical difficulties, please avail yourself to the number there, which we just lost. There we go, 179-8674. Next slide.
Hold on, I got it. They are not seeing the slides. So hold on. Let me get the slides for them. There, now they can see the slides.
Again, we have folks available to help you if you are having technical difficulties. So 503-479-8674. We will have an opportunity for public comment. And so for those of you all who are joining us in the virtual space, please make sure to mute when you are not talking to help us eliminate background noise. Next slide. All right. We have an exciting meeting today. We have a couple of new Historic Albina Advisory Board members, as well as a presentation from our community partners and leaders in this community about Albina Vision Trust. We'll have an opportunity for public comment, and then we will shift into some project updates before we take an opportunity to adopt our revised charter. Next slide, please. You all should be familiar. I will briefly go through these. You all never have a problem speaking up. Your voice matters. Look to hear from you, and so does the project. All of the insights and passion that you have for this community helps to move this work forward. We trust you'll be authentic and genuine, that you all will listen to each other for understanding. This is a very passionate project. We have to make pivots. Everything is not perfect, but we trust that you will deal with issues and not with people personally. We may experience a little bit of discomfort even today, but we ask you to remain respectfully engaged. We did not do all of this work. All of the historical context did not happen in a day, and we won't solve everything in this meeting. So we ask you to expect and accept non-closure, but that we're moving the needle forward each time we come together. Next slide. I would like to officially welcome to the Historic Albina Advisory Board some lovely and wonderfully energetic and passionate folks to the Historic Albina Advisory Board. I'll begin with Leo Davis, who will be representing Albina Vision Trust. And if you wanted to share a little something and say a welcome, I appreciate it.
It's an honor to be here to share the insights that we have at Albina Vision Trust, and thanks for welcoming us to this board member slot.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here as well. I know you'll be such a valuable asset, as well as our newly elected NAACP president and longtime advocate of this project, member of the COAC as well, but Mr. James Posey.
Thank you all very much. Excited. They tell me this is where all the action is. I'm excited to see what y'all are really doing. And so maybe I can contribute to this effort.
We know you will. Thank you so much. And I don't know, has Tamara joined online? I can't see you all, so forgive me.
Where? I think up here. I don't see her.
She may not have joined as of yet, but Tamara Kennedy, and she has a lens of economic development. She works for the Port of Portland. We are excited. She is passionate about continuing to help the Black community grow and how she can contribute there. So we are excited to welcome you all. We have a few more that we hope will be coming on And the goal of expanding this group was to make sure that we represented various areas within the Black community and lenses of expertise and professional insight, so that we did our best to give the best recommendations to the project as it moves forward. So we appreciate it. We know it's a commitment, and we're grateful to have you. Next slide, please. Well, I'm completely excited because I know it's been some months, and we have been working with community partners, with Alpina Vision Trust. They are also partnering with the city on just an exciting vision for reimagining and reinvestment in the Alpina corridor. And so we are excited to welcome them to share a piece of the community investment vision with you all. Some of you may be familiar. Hello, Brendan, good to have you. Some of you may be familiar, but I know that many haven't been as intricately involved. And so this is an opportunity for you all to hear and to see where you fit in and ask questions. With them today is the esteemed Michael Alexander, their executive director, Wendy Johannes, and newly joining their group is JT Flowers. And I always mispronounce your first name, but Talton Davis. So with that, I will turn it over to you to introduce your journalist.
I'm gonna grab the mic for just a second, just to use the privilege
Indeed.
of age. On behalf of the staff and board of Alpina Vision Trust, we welcome you. When I thought about just how I wanted to introduce this work, I was reminded of a quote by Maya Angelou, where she said, "People don't remember what you said, they don't remember what you did, they remember how you made them feel." And I take everything she says as the absolute God's honest truth, but I disagreed with that because this work over the last several years has reminded us of what this community heard, of what was said, and how it felt. And those things don't separate. They are intersection. For many of us whose life path was rich enough to bring us here, we have the vision and we have the benefit of the history of what happened in this community. For many of you, you have the memory of what happened to this community. And what brings us here today is the opportunity to create new history. And that's going to come with a lot of lenses. It's going to come with a lot of filters and multiple perspectives. But that's okay. Because, we're not what we're going to be, but we're certainly not what we used to be. And I think that's going to be the power of being in rooms like this. And at ABT, we welcome the opportunity to share with you the path that we see, but we understand that it may not be the only path. And it's going to be influenced by the good spirit and hopefully the openness of people who sit in tables like this to say the path ahead of us, the only thing we have to make sure is that it doesn't reflect the one behind us. It has to reflect the obligation that is to us. There's no restorative justice without restorative economics. It's got to reflect the fact that we not only lost history, but in some instances we lost hope, and we're going to reclaim our hope and our joy, and that's going to be a part of who we are going forward. So thank you for being here. We understand this may get muddy at times, but it's supposed to. I have two brothers, they're both MBAs, and every time we came home for Thanksgiving dinner, there was a fight in that room. But we came into it and we left it named Alexanders with a common love for who we were as a family. And I know that that characterizes this community as well. So with that,
side of your head, you want to be hit on ahead of time, so I keep in your head early. No, I'm just messing.
yeah, I know you. Incoming. But in any event, we welcome you. And let me now turn it over to our team, but we're delighted to have you here with us.
Thank you so much.
Well, the worst part of my job is following Mr. Alexander here, but today that honor is Katie's. So, but there have been questions about the community investment plan, which was the planning process that wrapped up last year. So I just want to acknowledge that there are a lot of conversations that we need to have together. Today is just the presentation of the work. Some of you are familiar with it, and for others, it's the first time. So just want to frame what that will be, but our fearless leader, Kayeen, who is part of the design team, will lead us through the presentation itself.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Mr. Alexander. So let's get started. What we're gonna go through, as mentioned, is a fairly quick summary of the community investment plan that was been put together over the past several years by Albina Vision Trust, working with a team of architects and economists and planners. And so what you'll see are a series of renderings like this that show what could be in Lower Albina as we think about what the future looks like. Albina today, this is what we're familiar with right now. We're sitting just outside of this boundary, or rather right in it, just on the edge, sorry. So what you're seeing is the Portland School District building, Veterans Memorial Coliseum, Moda Center, the bridge, and all of those areas that are in between. And it's really focused on civic facilities, sports arenas, and parking. If you notice, there isn't a lot of greenery there. It is mainly a concrete district, and that is shown to be to cause a heat spot in the greater context of the city as well. Next slide, please. This is what Albina used to be, the blueprint. So these pictures are vintage pictures from the Black community here in Albina. A mixture of some of the homes, the people, the events, the culture that was here, and still in many ways is still here in Albina and still here throughout Portland. Many have deep roots here, with Albina as Lower Albina beginning in the early 20s. So there have been Black community, Black families here for 100 years. And so looking at what the next 100 years looks like is, of utmost importance. Next slide, please. So 1948, an intact urban community. 1962, with the advent of the Memorial Coliseum and the construction of I-5, you're looking at a loss of 800 plus homes, over 3,000 displaced residents. And that's not only homes, it's also businesses, churches, all those things that make a community, all those physical things that make a community, all those memories. So many times we hear the stories of people who had childhood homes in the area, and they're like, well, this is about where my house was, and they're pointing to places that are now freeway, or in the places that are now parking lots, Memorial Coliseum, Moda Center. And looking at 2023, we can see how that street grid has completely changed, how the community physical aspect has completely changed as well, all the way completely within that picture. 7 decades of urban injustice. And so these pictures just really highlight the timeline and the different aspects of that destruction. With this, over $1 billion of wealth were lost, and we'll get into that in one of these next several slides. Next, please. So, considering what Albina might have looked like if it was treated like Irvington, looking at this, there are, we just took a site, or we just took a look at the pictures of what the street grid looked like, what the community looked like, and what it looks like now. And from that, we gather that there's over that $1 billion of wealth lost, and also looking at the number of the incomes, the values of the homes as well. And just thinking about how that looks like on a community-wide level, of the impact that that's had through multiple generations at this point. Again, people who had childhood family homes that were lost, they were displaced out of those, and then were never quite able to regain that wealth within the family. Next slide, please. Throughout the community investment plan, the first phase, we had a series of community engagements, which we called community connections. And this is just a sample of some of the people that helped to host and participate in creating some of those different events where we were very specific about connecting with Black community members and making sure that as we planned and took into consideration of what these future plans might look like, that we were hearing multiple voices. And so to that, and on these next few slides, you'll see some of that community engagement, but we spoke with over 600 different Black community members over the course of 18 different workshops in about 18 months. And so that was something that was, it was great, to be honest. It was really a great way to connect with people and hear different voices. So we had, go to the next slide, please. So these are some of those events, and events were catered towards slightly different audiences. So we always had the Black community centered in this, but whether it was youth, whether it was the audience in general, whether it was focused on businesses or working with other nonprofits to support the people that they work with, just being able to get out into different audiences, not only to get information, but to give information and share and look at how a community might be interested in designing this future plan. Next slide, please. Thank you. And to that end, we have some of what we heard. And some of those very specific touch points were adequate and equal access to nature, sense of belonging for the Black community, shared social support, rich variety of public spaces, and wealth built within the Black community. And that one is a very special one because that is one of our, it is one of the values that we hold dearly for this project, is looking at creating wealth, building wealth, creating wealth and building wealth in such a way that it becomes generational wealth, that it is not a one-time thing, but an ongoing growth and development for the community, within the community of not only the current community, but the future community as we look towards the next 50 years, the next 100 years. And you'll see some of these hands and some of these people involved are youth. And that was one of our workshops where we really centered around talking to kids and what they might envision towards the community in their futures. Next slide, please. And so when we're talking about a rich variety of places, we're looking at housing, public spaces, commercial and entrepreneurial spaces, as well as community hubs. Again, with those same values from those last slides, but what that looks like is really, it's across the board. So you have places that are parks for public spaces. You have places that are maybe a marketplace, a main street where people are able to connect a little bit differently. Housing where people feel at home versus just a place that they're living and staying. Commercial and entrepreneurial spaces where people are able to not only have their business, but to learn how to create a business and have that support for a business, whether it is people that are able to come in and become clients and customers, or it is the other side of support, so technical support, as well as being able to grow their business. And then the community hubs, we have several, namely educational and entrepreneurial, arts, food, wellness, to name a few, and we're considering them hubs as being centers of some of that programming. But then also being able to be out in the community and expand from the builds location. Next slide, please. These are some density studies that were done during the community investment plan, looking at wealth creation for Black Portlanders, low density, medium density, and high density. You can see some of those different values that are highlighted. So financial potential realized, amount of Black Portland with access to wealth realized, amount of development and construction opportunities for small businesses, the amount of shared green space, and employment and resources opportunities. And so each one of these have different amounts that can kind of play into that as far as how much is available, how much could be realized in these low density, medium density, and high density developments. And so with this slide, what we have is an overall look of the investment plan and what this neighborhood might look like. So you're seeing a close-knit neighborhood that includes the education entrepreneur hub, possible market, some gardens that were reflected in that very first slide that we saw with the greenhouses, a food hub, which is a place that might not only be for growing food, but also learning about the science behind food, as well as distribution and so on. An arts hub, whether that's art space that looks like a museum, looks like a plays or theater, music, any of these different things, definitely still under investigation. And then having a waterfront park, again, reconnecting Black community to the river and creating these spaces of rest and peace within the community. One of the things you'll notice is that all the larger buildings have green roofs, and that really came out of a conversation in those community engagement workshops where we had specifically a community member that asked, where's my $1 million view? So often when there's this investment in communities and you get these high rises, the community no longer has access, and they're losing out not only on the economic growth, but they're also losing out on that feeling of having something special. And so having these $1 million views that are accessible to the community is something that, again, it's just that direct feedback. And I think really brings a specialness to some of this development. So again, network of community hubs. So we have the education hub, the food hub, and then Albina Gardens. And so when we're looking at the education hub, that is a mixture of education across ages. So that is early childhood development, primary, secondary schools, possibly working with all the lovely universities that we have, and making that connection at that level for whether it's some special high school workshops or if it's a college workshop, back to school, back to training along the lines of entrepreneurship and business classes or workforce training. These are all the kinds of things that can happen within this education hub. Within the food hub, again, growing food, learning how to have a sustainable garden, farming in different senses, and being able to even learn something along the lines of culinary arts and really what is that food chain, that food process as it goes from farm to table, essentially. And really kind of doubling down on that with the Albina Gardens is having that street level green space where people are able to access community gardens, where they're able to have a stroll outside in the greenery in that space and have that chance to connect with nature as well. Next slide, please. And this is one of the renderings of a close-knit neighborhood where we have children able to play and community members that are able to look out and keep an eye on those children. And what you're seeing in that back building is a possibility of having a daycare where children will be able to be dropped off and learn that, again, that early childhood development within their own community as parents are they're off to their business or their job or their classes, wherever they're headed. Next slide, please. The waterfront park, again, a chance to be out and enjoy and bring back that these civic spaces that are able to be enjoyed by everyone. This is a view of the Arts Hub. And that's again with the Willamette River in the city of Portland downtown skyline in the background. And this view of it is showing a concert on the rooftop and what that could be in this space, and really kind of bringing that connection again to the river, to outside, to the arts, back to Lower Albina. And so these 10 people represent some wealth building stories. And we have Aries, who's an Escalon contractor, Mr. Williams, who is an elder who's looking at retiring and spending his retirement in Lower Albina, Nichelle, who's an entrepreneur who runs a tech space and an innovation lab, Rocky, who's an elementary school student who's able to utilize the education hub and play in the parks and just have fun. Maybe he's visiting the tech lab that Nichelle runs. Tony, who's a single father who is returning from incarceration, who's able to be supported by some of the different programming that's in the area and is able to get housing that is affordable to him, but that is also family size, so that he's able to take care of his daughter. Zawadi, who is a business owner who perhaps owns a restaurant in the area and is able to take advantage of that food hub for fresh food, and is able to maybe hold some classes there to teach other community members some different foods and things. The Johnsons, who are a family that are returning to the area and they've decided to have a home and start their family there. Kita, who is perhaps a musician, again, holding classes at the Education Hub and the Arts Hub, and is one of these, the younger folks who's able to move in and just is happy to experience community. The Turners, who are another family who maybe doesn't return to Albina, but is able to invest in one of the units, and then maybe they're joining some other families, but they're able to invest within this and have that generational wealth start with them. And then Miss Yvonne, who is perhaps a former dance teacher, again, another senior who's able to access these the education hubs, the arts hubs, and is able to enjoy being in community, maybe sitting out on her front porch or on her balcony, listening to the kids play, and then is able to see them as she's teaching some different things around the community. So just looking at how some of these different folks are being able to interact with this, and we can go to the next slide. It's the same slide again, but just thinking about these different folks and how they're able to interact with this landscape and this community and what that looks like, from not only a community standpoint, but an individual standpoint, and being able to feel that you're at home. And that's one of the values that came out of the community. It's one of the things that we wanted to make sure went into the community engagement and really kind of find out what kinds of things would make you feel at home, what kind of culture, what kind of architectural spaces help you to feel at home. And these are some of these things that came out of that and came up with that. So this is, I believe, the last slide. I just wanted to leave this up if there were any any questions that anyone might have about anything that I've said, maybe anything that you've read about the project, the plan, or any comments that you'd like to share. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason, maybe we could go to the full view so we can see who else is in the room. I see Mr. Edwards, I see your hand raised. Good to see you.
Good to see you, and thank you very much. Thank you for that presentation. That was a very good presentation. It helped us get an idea of what's going on. What I wanted to ask is there a health component in any of that regarding mental, physical, emotional health of our community?
Yes, one of the things that we did look at is a wellness hub as well, and it's not listed on that larger map, but it is something that we are considering, especially in that area around the education and the food hubs, simply because having access to so many of these things can improve your health greatly, especially mental health, especially being able to be out in these green and natural spaces is definitely, from just that initial point of beginning to help with your mental health, as well as finding other resources within the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thoughts or questions, conversation? I wonder if we could go back to the slide that is the broader vision and show maybe the connection to that so people see where the highway cover is. And then we'll go to Ms. Leslie Didlow. Yeah, that'd be great. Ms. Leslie, your question or comment?
Are you ready for me?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just had a couple of questions. I see there's a lot of housing, and since I work for the Housing Bureau, I'm just interested in how that's going to be funded, or thoughts around the cost of that, or just what your thinking is about how that's all going to get developed.
We are currently in phase 2 of our community investment plan, and we are developing, and in that, we're looking at phase 1, which is that north portion of this, which is the close-knit neighborhood, and looking at what a more finalized and formal plan might be for that. That is looking at funding, the building structure type, et cetera. So we do have some updates that we will actually be presenting here in July. That will include some of that possible funding, possible partners, et cetera.
And I'd add here, our first project is a low-income housing tax credit project funded with Metro affordable housing bond dollars. I think this presentation is sharing what has been, but as we look at the kind of housing that's desired for the close-knit neighborhood, there are real trade-off discussions that we need to have with the community about the amount of affordable housing to ownership, and what that right mix is, which is then what would determine funding. So there will be a workshop in just a few weeks that you all are invited to. But this laid out the first set of priorities, which is really to make sure that north of Broadway is where we're focusing for the residential close-knit neighborhood.
Mr. Posey?
I hate to have to be somebody who just getting here asking all the questions. I just wanted to kind of shut up and see what's going on. But I'm just curious to know, is there an economist that's working along with this team that is analyzing in real time what you all are doing, what the projections are, and putting numbers associated with, is that something we should and could be? Who is the economist working with you all?
So we have Mark Norman, who's an economist, and then we are also working with West.
With who?
Eco Northwest and Mark Norman.
Are they contracted, or is it part of your team, or is that something that you know, I mean, support, I mean, when you talk about the vision, the plan, I've never seen any real numbers that extrapolate, you know, what the quantifiable and, you know, what those expectations are. For example, when you go back to those people, the various people, the little boys, and are those real people? Are they real people in the community, or is it something you all? I mean, these are real live bodies. Some of them was.
Yeah, we do some.
I mean, I'm just trying to figure out whether they real people or not, because it looked like they, you know, I mean, generated. I've never seen any of them before.
Right,
myself,
so,
Now, you know, these are scenarios.
Oh, scenario, that's. I didn't know, I'm just asking the question now, I just asked them, but I didn't know.
These are
whether
what we're building
There
scenarios.
are scenarios that we have put together that we
To
envision.
look at, to look at,
Yeah, tell them the story.
Yeah, okay.
But based on
Look at
real
what's built.
stories, right? And so there's a reason that we use those pictures as opposed to pictures of people. Because what we want to get at is, what is that experience? Like, who are we talking about? With the little boy, the question is, what is the experience of a 12-year-old boy in this community? It doesn't matter if it, like, whose little boy it is, but those scenarios came from asking the community members in those workshops, what are the experiences that are important that need to be baked into the development from the very beginning? And so, you know, what we heard is, we need to think about contractors, we need to think about people coming out of incarceration, we need to think about people who have been displaced to East County and don't intend to move back to Albina, how do they benefit? We need to think about children and what a generational plan means for them. So and we need to think about elders that have stayed in the community and maybe are less interested in the financial opportunities than they are the social ones and the opportunities to contribute. So all of the scenarios came from real life stories of people in our community. The pictures were not, you know.
I was just trying to envision how you guys came up with that. And for me, it would have been more authentic. We were talking about being authentic, real bodies who really have those experiences. And we could go back and track who those people are and authenticate their experiences in this community. That, to me, that's huge. And I'm just gonna, you know, I'll be real honest with you, when you guys showed me all the people who were involved on the front end of this piece, and we started talking about entrepreneurial businesses, and flashing through my mind was all the businesses, the Scott family, for example, Coast Janitorial, all these people who have been around this community for years, who are the millionaires or the potential millionaires, how they play, what was their scenario, and how we got, you know, to where we are. Because the truth of the matter is that we got into a bad situation, as Mike is saying, for a reason. The racism, all the things that precluded us from owning homes, more importantly, keeping homes. And I was just trying to figure out, a part of this vision is how we not repeat that, Mike, as you were saying earlier. So you have to go back and find out. I'm curious to know about Prosper Court. Prosper, you all know when you did that piece down here next to the Urban League. What's that? The legacy piece down at that hospital land down there? The hill block thing there? Yeah. That, you know, the truth of the matter is, what bothers me is that we still haven't been paid back for that piece. So I'm trying to figure out, are we repeating that whole scenario again? And what's a part of this vision that will preclude us from going back and repeating those negative histories that we've had in this community? You all understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So PDC did a whole big piece where they came out and confessed
about robbing us. Straight up robbing us, taking our houses, running people out of town. You know, we got an educational achievement gap, 50% between Black kids and white kids.
Right.
Where does that fit into this vision? Y'all understand what I'm saying? I'm gonna shut up. Bothers me.
Well, I think to address some of those concerns, right, especially just that last one about the achievement gap. The children that are perhaps working or are attending classes and living in this, many of them have not been born yet, right?
Many of them have not been born yet.
Many of them have not been born yet. Because if we're looking at an elementary school and we're looking at maybe we'll just say 5 years for completion of an education of a school of this first phase. Many of those kids are just being born or they haven't been born yet as we're moving towards the future. So we're talking about future children. We're talking about future people in this neighborhood. And if we're talking about current entrepreneurs, how do we select one, right? So when we are giving these scenarios, we're really trying to pull aspects from so many different community members, so many different businesses, and show an example of what this could look like for that community member, for that story, for that experience. It's not to, well, let me talk about what it is to do. It is to be able to connect on a level to say, okay, I can see myself connect with this pathway. I can see my kids connect with that pathway. Oh, my parents are maybe connecting with this pathway over here. Because if we're talking about folks that are going to live in their retirement, you know, that's folks maybe in their 30s and 40s right now, as we're talking about the completion of a lot of this building. So when we're looking at choosing which stories, those I wanted to mention, they had to come from who the community wanted to see in these, or make sure that we were looking at what kind of profiles should we be including as we're doing this planning. And so that's why they're not connected to a specific person. Because it's also very hard to choose who are you gonna pick. I mean,
If I could add to this. These are basic scenarios that we just went over. We have it. You know, this is a progression. We are soon to be at the stage that you're talking about. Once we look at what the issues are, what the economists, what the numbers are, now we include folks, actual names, actual people, actual places, and continue forward with the reality.
Yeah, and we get to start to do that, right, on the implementation. So, you know, master plans have to be long range in nature because you're talking about what's gonna happen over the next 20, 30 years. What has come out of the community investment plan is what defined Albina 1, the very first project. And so, you know, you will have real profiles of what the outcomes were for tradespeople, for families in that building, what the wealth building opportunities generated beyond the stability of affordable housing, like what those outcomes are. You see in the implementation, what the community investment plan does, though, that's different than typical development, is it says from the beginning, we're going to define both who will benefit so that we can identify the economic strategies needed to realize those goals, as opposed to doing the development and then saying, and now how do the kids benefit and how, you know, and so on.
I just want to say that I'm down with the vision. But what clouds my vision is me walking from my house down through Dawson Park and seeing decades and decades of people who are destroyed. These are the foundational people in our community now who will never, if I'm being too pessimistic, I don't see a vision for those folks. I don't see anything interrupting the racism, the exclusion and all the other determinants that have brought them to the very low point in their existence. It's heartbreaking. So that clouds my vision for all these projected people that out here when that road is going to be so hard. I see that.
Yeah, and this is where ABT will not solve all, it's like there, we will need the NAACP and, Urban League and all, there are so many people that will have to.
The NAACP is broken. I'm trying to fix it. The wheels are coming off the one side over here.
But this will never be the end all be all, and it's not intended to be, and so, that.
It's gonna take all of you. Different one. So I have a question online. I know JT has a comment and then Srinivasa. So let's go to Estelle on our in virtual. If you'll unmute, my dear, thank you.
Hello. I just had a couple of quick questions, which kind of have already been touched upon. I was going to ask about the inclusion of the displaced community in East Portland. If there was a plan included for that, because I didn't hear, I just heard that mentioned in passing, but how is that included in this investment plan? Like, is there something built in this plan for that? I'm sorry, I can't really hear you. A little bit.
Okay, well, I'll do my best.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
With East Portland and those who've been displaced out there are kind of a couple different pathways. There is investment. We're looking at different ways and different tools for some entry-level investment for those who have been displaced and maybe either want to move back into Lower Albina or perhaps want to stay in East Portland or in East County. And then also looking at what it would be to partner perhaps with some different organizations that are out in East County to help support people who are interested in investing and or interested in moving into Lower Albina. Also envisioning what would help to bridge East County and Lower Albina.
If I can offer just a lens on that, I represented ABT on the Metro Transportation Task Force for 2.5 years. And a part of our role there was to make sure that as there were these major infrastructure, they were targeted with moving people in and out of East County and Albina easily, because some of us live there, but some of us just come here. The things that sort of define community for us are here. And to have that sort of bi-directional access is important. And so I think there are ways in which, East County will hopefully develop and find investments that allow it to define its own path, but it doesn't have to be separated from what I would call, our base.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right from Brooklyn to the Brooklyn. Yeah.
I would want to add, I don't mean just like transportation wise, but the lifespan is 10 to 15 years shorter for people who live in Rockwood and Gresham than people who live in Portland. And so it's important to think of our community members in that way. Like it's a matter of quality of life that's changed for community members who have been displaced. So it's not only, asking like, hey, is this something you'd be interested in? It's thinking of how we can improve their quality of life because the air quality is worse out there. There's with the heat, there's less shade and trees and noise and all of those things that are happening in Rockwood and Gresham that don't happen in Portland. So as you guys are building all of these nice structures and nice things here, that's still not going to happen in East County. Even if you partner with organizations out there, that's not happening in East County. And so I think that that's just something to really think about. And Portland, the plans that they're making and the ways that they're cleaning, quote unquote, cleaning up Portland, let's be real about it, it's shoving their problems out to East County. And that's going to impact the quality of life for people in East County even further. So that's just something to think about as I think you're thinking about your plan. And I also wanted to touch upon already what I think Mr. Posey talked about is helping. I wanted to ask about if there was something about like maintaining current ownership of homes for our community, and just kind of while you guys are thinking about the future, are you guys investing in maintaining the community now so we don't lose anything else?
So the geography that we operate in is the one on the map. And in this part of Lower Albina, there are no residences that are owned by anybody. There is one building that's still standing, the Paramount apartment, and that's it. So
I think maybe what I'm hearing her say is just like in our broader community thinking.
yeah.
And putting those who currently use. It's an expansion, like from the.
I couldn't hear, sorry.
I was hopefully clarifying or just adding to the conversation in regards to, though there currently aren't any homeowners within this kind of Lower Albina area, thinking about our current homeowners throughout the Portland metro area and what other collaborative effort and partnerships could be thinking about how we help our Black residents keep the homes that they have. And I know that there are some programs, but I think that's a broader community conversation and one for some of our brilliant minds to help the rest of us think through as well, in addition to this. Thank you, Estelle. I know JT had a comment, Sprilla, and then I see Mr. Edwards' hand as well.
Yeah, Estelle, can you hear me? Microphone.
Pardon?
It's a little muffled.
A little muffled. Okay. So I'm gonna do my best just to reflect from my perspective on the question Mr. Posey asked and on the question that you just asked. I'll talk about your point first. I think they're actually very intertwined. Mr. Posey, you talked about the heartbreak that you experienced just seeing the fragmentation of the community and the loss that's caused people that we know directly, our family members, our friends, people that we grew up alongside. For me, those would be my grandparents, people around that are our elders in this community. And Estelle, you talk about, are we thinking about ways that we can actively protect people who have managed to somehow circumnavigate this gauntlet that has been, I guess, thrust upon us as a community here in a city that was built to push us out in every way, shape, or form. I think the really important thing that I want to emphasize about this work is that this is a multi-generational project to try to ensure that those barriers do not continue to persist as our city continues to grow and develop, right? So what this is for us, this segment of the city is going to be developed one way or another, right? The most important thing that we can do as a community is to ensure that we not only have a seat at the table, but that the table is actually fashioned by our own hands, And I think that's really what we're trying to get at and address here. If we could think of this less as an individually owned project and more as a vessel that we can all use to get us from where we've been historically and all the damage that's been caused to us to a better, more secure, more clear and more just place in the future. Estelle, to your point, I think this is a plan that will enable us to make sure that 50 years from now, 60 years from now, Black family members and Black people in this city have an opportunity to own real estate have an opportunity to prosper on an economic and business level, have an opportunity to invite their family members who live in East County to, you know, an apartment that they've been renting in a beautiful part of the city that's vibrant and that's bustling. And I think that's the important thing for us to emphasize here. It's not just about a short-term solution, a short-term fix. This is both historical and forward-thinking. And a term that Katie uses often is this idea of past futures. You know, we're trying to draw a line between what's happened and what could be. And if we could almost like reframe the conversation and those discussed in that framework, I think it might be helpful for us.
Before we move forward, I want to make sure that we can check this owl. I think people on the virtual stream are having a difficult time hearing us.
There's a setting that we might be able to adjust here.
Okay, thanks, Natalie. If you all will just bear with us, I don't know if you can hear some
We can
folks.
hear you now, Erica.
Okay. And I'm a singer, so I'm shouting. But they are working on it. So I apologize if some of that was muffled because it was beautifully stated. And so hopefully there's a recording. I appreciate that. I think it was very insightful. Sprinna, I know you had a comment. I'm going to go to Mr. Edwards. So if you'll project for our folks in the virtual space.
Real quick, there's also a comment in the chat.
Okay, I'll take a look. Sprinna?
Yes, can you go back to the slide that had low, medium, high density, and it showed the wealth building and stuff? Oh, I'm so sorry. The slide that has low, medium, high density. Okay, let me check this. I just have two questions. Yes.
This
one, yeah. I like this slide. This is awesome. So my question, it's a data question. I will forget. What goes into like just taking one of these categories, like the financial potential realized? Are there certain decision-making like tipping points between the low to medium or medium to high that kind of are distinct decision points so that people will understand what needs to be decided and whether or not we want to stay within low or medium? Does that make sense? Like how do you know what the decisions are that go into each of these?
Well, some of that has to do with who's developing and who has access to invest. So if you are in the low density, you'll also notice that the financial potential realized tracks pretty much the same with the amount of Black workers with access to wealth realized. If you're looking at the low density, for example, single family homes, which means there's a limited number of people, a limited number of homes that people are able to invest in and purchase. So you're looking at maybe, so let's say 50 to 100 families versus on the high density side, 800, right? So just the size of the projects impacts how much financial potential can be realized, how much wealth can be generated within the community that can be then turned into generation. So that's an example of one of those types of decisions.
And are there like, let's say something programmatic that could happen that could change something from local, for instance, if the city had a partnership that was a pathway program for home ownership, would solutions like that be able to help something that is low density get closer to realizing the benefits of medium category? Is it pretty lines?
It really depends on which category you're looking at. So if it was a program, it might push forward the amount of Black workers with access, but the overall financial potential might not be.
And then my second question is more of a process question around the hubs. So take the education hub, for instance. it seems like there are certain partnerships that would have to develop early on. And so I'm just wondering, is there gonna be like an RFP process, that organizations that are interested in being part of that will, have to kind of approach you all? Or is it already a list being developed? Is there like what is that time period look like?
Right now, we are starting to develop a list of people of organizations that might be interested from our side, just thinking about programming that's out there, organizations that are out there, and what it might look like for those organizations to be involved in the buildings. So from that standpoint, then as things are built, RFPs and so on would be available.
The reason I ask that is because I think organizations that have already done things like capital campaigns and know how to raise money, it's going to be a lot easier for them to see over that hurdle of how to get there. But thinking about organizations that have never done that before, they might not even be aware that it's something that takes 5 to 8 or more years to plan. And so I'm just curious, like, how do we get the information out for orgs that are not your bigger institutions in Oregon, so that they can know that they can apply for the process?
Yes, so that's a process that will be created.
It's very much so. There's so many times organizations are invited at the time of RFP issues. This is inviting organizations and partners before there is an RFP, before there is a project, to say, if there's an education hub, what should it look like? Should it be the kind of space that allows for lots of smaller education-based organizations to work together? Is what we really need, an anchor hub that has strong economic drivers? We're at those sets of questions that we're asking everybody to weigh on, because then that will inform what the building looks like, what the partnership will be, what the process for identifying those partnerships are.
So why are you right? Take initiative and let folks know, like let you know. Just say, okay,
Come to the workshops.
yeah. And then in general, I love the presentation, particularly the storylines. I can see myself represented in lots of different ones. And I love seeing the visualizations of the waterfront park and all of that. So this is really hard work that I know we need to put that in.
Thank you. I'm going to shift to Mr. Edwards, and then I know that there's a question in the chat. So we can.
Thank you. I wanted to go back to the healthcare piece, because you talked about wellness, and someone once said, "What good does it do to gain the world if you lose your soul?" And I'm a Black man. Mental health. Black men do not talk about mental health. They don't get counseling or therapy at all. And I think that's a huge thing that needs to be addressed here. And to me, when you leave that out, I think that, or if it's an addition or a supplement, I think we're missing the point, because like I say, I'll give you a good example. If you all remember Paul Allen on the Trailblazers and the Seattle Seahawks, he's dead. With all the money he had, he could not prolong his life because he had a health disparity. Black folks have health disparities, and we need to address that. If we don't address that, yeah, there could be 1,000, 10,000 people that benefit from this Albina Vision Trust. But at the same time, what about the rest of our community that are killing each other on the streets on the daily? How much is a life worth? So I say that to say that, I'm not trying to, put a guilt trip on anyone, but we need to bring all of our community along. Everybody needs to have an opportunity. And if we don't address the healthcare issue, and I'm not just talking about mental health, I'm talking about physical health, I'm talking about emotional health, because our community has been sick for a long time and nobody addresses it. We don't talk about mental health because there's a stigma behind it. Somebody says, "Oh, he cray." And so I say that to say that with all this money we got for this Albina Vision Trust and all the investment Are we gonna invest in our people? Are we gonna invest in buildings and businesses? Is that the only investment we have? Because if we are, we're missing the boat. Because our people need to be healthy before they can do anything. If you don't have your health, you got nothing. Ask Paul Allen. Oh, that's right. You can't ask him because he ain't here no more. And he left all that money behind. So that's my point, is my community is a sick community. My community needs to be addressed, have those healthcare issues addressed for the whole community, not just part of it. And money can't solve those problems. We got Donald Trump is crazy as hell. He got a whole bunch of money. So we need to address those problems and make sure that our community is healthy first and foremost. Then they can take advantage of all these things. So let's not leave that out. Let's not get caught up in a whole bunch of money and wealth and all that, because it should be health before wealth.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Edwards. I'm going to, because of our time, Dr. Richard did have a comment. I'm going to briefly touch on Leslie's comment. So I'm going to let you share, Dr. Richard, quickly before we move, because this is not the last opportunity for us to engage around this, okay? Dr. Richard? And please project. I know you have your preacher voice, so come on, sir.
I don't have a pulpit, so I don't know how much I can project.
Come on.
Thank you, Erica, for allowing me this time. So one of the things that's kind of interesting to me with this, if you go back to that map where it actually showed the entire little community. Yeah, you know, this kind of reminds me of what they did out in the village. Right, it just reminds me of what they did. Well, they call it New Columbia Village. I still call it the village. And it kind of reminds me of that same piece. And you know, when we start having conversations about reframing, it's hard to have those discussions if there's not a commitment to do no further harm. We've got to have that, and we've got to have it in writing. Right, and I think I asked for that, and I'm not so sure where that project landed or who was assigned to it, but I need that in writing so that we have a commitment to do no harm, right? As we continue building out, you know, these particular, or this particular work here. And then for me, it comes to definition. So when we say education hub how do we define that? Who defines that? Right, see, when we say community, because I heard you say we're gonna bring people into community. Who defines community and what does that look like? And does this take into account culture and not just people / human beings? Does it take into account culture? Because I think what's lost in the discussion a lot of times when we talk about the past, and if you're far removed from the past, I understand. I get it. But we lost more than homes. We lost culture. And I've never heard anybody talk about the culture that was lost, the heritage that was lost. We always equated or conflated the property, right? And that's great. But we lost an entire culture. We lost an entire way of thinking. We lost an entire way of doing business. From a cultural perspective, how does this take into account culture and heritage if our audience is Black or African American?
I appreciate that. I don't want to answer for ABT, but I would suggest this is an opportunity for many of you to continue to be a part of the conversation as they continue to develop and to give input, and for us to stay collaborative and connected. While this map is here, if you'll see at the top where it's kind of striped, it doesn't quite go that far east, but the cap would be built just to the east of this development. And that's really part of much of our desire to have this group see, who had not been able to participate yet, how the two tie together, how closely knit, and what our conversation in this group around economic development and what potentially would happen on the cover and how it ties into broader community vision. I'll share briefly Leslie's question in the chat. Was talking about fair housing laws and that it can't be restricted only to Black and brown people. So the thought around how to ensure that this isn't become another gentrified area. I know that because of our time, I want to be conscious of it. We likely don't have time to get into that, but I know that's a broad concern all the time, even for Rose Quarter. How do we invest in this? We give our time and blood and sweat and we invest dollars. And then does this area become the Pearl District where we cannot participate and where it is gentrified again? So I know that is on the minds and hearts of many of you. And I would encourage us, especially now that Cleo is joining this board continuously, that the partnership now is coming to a point where we should be more collaborative. We should have more opportunity for us to engage on both sides. I don't want to interrupt, but if you all don't have anything further to add, Mr. Alexander, you have closing thoughts for us?
You know, I think, well, first of all, thank everybody for being here. And I think one of the questions that you know, Brother Posey raised is, you know, how do we ensure that we don't find ourselves right back to where we started from? And that's gonna happen because of rooms like this. I mean, at the end of the day, if we find ourselves, but then shame on us. Then absolutely shame on us, because we know what's at risk. This, you know, didn't happen overnight. We have to look back 50 years and we have to allow ourselves to look forward 50 years. I mean, this is going to take time and visioning, and it's that old phrase of a great leader plants trees whose shade they will never see. We won't see much of this, but if the foundational beliefs that bring us into this space, the shared pain, the shared aspiration, and quite frankly, the desire for joy and resiliency, that's what's going to keep us moving. So, I mean, as I said, this is, it's big work and it's not easy work. And I just appreciate the fact that we can be in this space, because the one shared commitment we have is that we ain't going back. We're not going back.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. I look forward to more conversations. I want to move us forward just in the interest of our time. We generally would have our public comments. If we have folks in the room, I would love to be able to shift to that quickly. Are you all seeing anyone in the virtual space?
There's no one in the virtual space at this time.
Okay. All right, then we can move forward.
Hold on, this is
Mr. Mojica?
Yeah, I'm inspired to thank the Vision Trust. I know those of you who are in the room. Can no one hear me?
Yeah, they're having trouble.
So thank you to the Vision Trust, those of you who are in the room, and also those that we are responsible for the press releases and the good news. And as Brother Alexander said, we're not going to see the shade of these trees. Always fraught with concern about being divided in effort, particularly intellectually. We're all on the same pathway. I've got hundreds of questions, but most importantly is I've got an intellectual sign off and a commitment to our communities. How viable this is, why it's important, and that we're on the road to getting there. We're always threatened by funding and money. And when someone moves from the Pearl District, yeah, and it's unfortunate, but it's evened out. You know, it's affordable. Hopefully that won't happen, the project of this scope, but this is good stuff. People that are listening out there, the shared call, this is good work, very good work. So Brother Alexander, Russ, thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Yes.
And you know, I'm sitting over here, you know, I should say something, I'm about to say something, but, you know, I would like to say something. You know, Monique, thanks for that. I struggle with this one. I struggle only because of the fact of the conditions in the room, the norm of the room, I should say. You know, it's kind of hard to be in the midst of your people and talk about your people at the same time. You know, and to make sure that you can hold them accountable in a condition that the external conditions hold you all accountable, that if y'all don't all get along, we can't move forward. That's a false reality, right? So how much truth is really in the room? Okay, so and these are the conditions that in my mind, I'm sitting here looking at. I'm not gonna just say something to y'all just for the sake of saying good job. You know, I mean, because there's some issues around credibility and all those things. And I'm real careful about what star I follow home. You know, you got to prove some salt to me. You know, not just a game and a dance. And then your actions speak louder than words. How you do what you do is more important to me than what you got to say. Okay, so it's real important that we as a committee and we as a community hold this condition accountable. It don't matter who leading it, but whoever leading it needs to be held accountable. And so all them words and all that stuff, real fluffy, real nice. I like fluffy words. I like them just before I go to sleep at night. But when I wake up in the morning, it's time to go to work. And the truth about the work is rather not if y'all holding yourselves accountable, but you can rest assured I'm gonna hold your ass accountable. So the rest of that, thank y'all for sharing that with me. You know, all them fluffy kind of things is already nice. It gives me warm feeling, but I know I'm gonna be dead and gone. And Posey, your ass gonna be dead and gone too. With it, but you do got grandkids and stuff like that. So, but anyway.
He gave me a leeway. I want to say to y'all real quickly, we need an acquisition component on the front of it. All that land between what happened in 1948 and now is desert. Y'all gotta acquire this land, not 10 years from now. You gotta acquire it now. That daggum factory down there burning them damn tires, you know, environmentally killing us right on the edge of the river. Y'all gotta go down there and spend that money to acquire that land now, and then dedicate it to us Black people who will rent out of this section of the community.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm gonna move us forward. I appreciate all of you gentlemen. There are some really important project updates that we need to share with you all, with everyone in this room. So I'm gonna start with Brendan, who is the director of the Urban Mobility Office for ODOT.
Well, thank you, Ms. Erica. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here again. By introduction, Brendan Finn, I'm Director of ODOT's Urban Mobility Office. For those of you who don't know, the Rose Quarter Project resides under that. I wanted to be here tonight to talk to this group. I think I was at the last meeting, but it's been a little while since we've been able to chat because we're at a point of, I wouldn't say inflection, but something's happening down in Salem that I want to share with all of y'all and give your input. And I do have a question for you at the end here. So yeah, he's already laughing.
Yeah, because I know it's coming.
So your mobility strategy, and I was going to bring up a map just to give people a little bit of sense of geography. And let's see if it comes up. It does. Presentation. So this, come back. There we go. This is what we work on in the Urban Mobility Office, all the little pieces that are to it. It's a set of big infrastructure projects around the region to address congestion and mobility issues. I won't get into my spiel on everything we do. We're guided by the Oregon Transportation Commission. Much of this was under the direction of the last big transportation package that got passed by the Oregon State Legislature in 2017. That was a lot of our funding. Part of that complex financing mechanism for this project said, we want you to go out and implement tolling. So we have been moving forward on 2 separate tolling programs. The Rose Quarter project is intertwined with those tolling programs in that they are supposed to help pay for portions of construction. Now, we've known going through the design process together over the years that this project is underfunded. It was way underfunded, that we have a battle, uphill battle to go to make sure we can attain that funding. We still feel like we have a pathway for that. And I'll discuss that in a minute. Governor Kotek, which came into office, examined all the work that we were doing under this urban mobility strategy and said to us, you have to take a little bit more time with tolling. People aren't used to it. I grew up back in New York. We got plenty of tolling there, but it's not something that Oregonians have digested yet. And we really have to take our time to make sure we're getting it right on a number of different aspects. So she delayed the implementation of tolling as it was in our finance plan for 1 year for implementation. That has reverberations on all of our projects and the timing of implementation. So tomorrow, so she's asked to have a financial plan for all of these pieces in here. Well, a number of these pieces in here, most importantly, Rose Quarter, the I-205 improvements and the Boone Bridge project, which you can see there on the southernmost portion of the map. And we have put together a financial plan for these pieces that takes into account the fact that we are not going to be getting the revenue from tolling that we had in our original plan. The reason why I wanted to bring that here tonight and talk to you about it is I will be before the Oregon Transportation Commission, which is the body that regulates us and gives us direction, as obviously as well as they implement the statutes that the legislature puts into law. So tomorrow, we are going to be making as an agency a recommendation on how we move forward with the Rose Quarter Improvement Project, which is asking for an additional, we have to date spent $115 million towards this project. What we're asking for is another $44 million for us to get towards completion, near completion of most of the design aspects. This keeps us working, this group working. To helping us get it right. As I said, I think in a couple of your first meetings when we had to have some really tough conversations, you had to look me in the eye and say, Brendan, I like you, but there's a lot of trust that needs to be built here for me to show up at this. And you did as well, Mr. Washington, you did as well, Ms. Monique, as everyone else did. So I'm here being as transparent as possible about the path forward. So we are going to request that $44 million from the commission tomorrow to continue the design work and the work that is being done at these tables. So we can get in a point design where we become very competitive for the federal infrastructure dollars and grants that exist, for a future transportation package that we are seeing that might happen in the 2025 session, as well as possibilities of other revenues that may come from the tolling program. So we are not using in this plan prospective financing. We've been told you have to give us a finance plan based on the money that you have right now. And so within the money that we have right now, within this urban mobility strategy, we are requesting the Transportation Commission to keep us going for another couple of years until we can get to that point where we have a solidified plan. And we're going to be working with lots of our partners, because what you saw, we feel like this project is a catalyst to the vision that we just saw on the screen. We've all walked around this part. It obviously needs a lot of work. It can't maintain without these connections from the transportation perspective as well as a community perspective. So I guess my question for this group is I would like to go to the commission tomorrow, tell them I was at this meeting tonight and say that we want to continue to work and that you're willing to continue to work again for another couple of years while we put together, finish the touches. Megan's going to talk to you tonight, and I apologize that I have to go about these you've been walking us through the design requirements. We've been going through it all together for the past 2 years to get us to that right design. We feel like it's there. There's still some more work to do, as we know, but I guess that's why I'm coming here tonight to answer questions. To again be honest and
Got a budget for that 43 million?
We have the dollars, assigned. They do come through House Bill, 2017, so it's actual gas tax dollars that are part of the petty, gas tax rates that came in House Bill 27.
Gotcha, but you do have a breakout of how you spending that money? Are you just gonna request a lump sum of money and that's, you'll figure it out after?
Megan, I'm leaning on you about
Yeah.
that. She's gonna have to manage the dollars that we do get and how it can be spread out into the project, so I don't know if you have.
Yeah, so those dollars would go, again, to Brenda's point, to make sure that we're readying the projects for construction and readying the project for competitiveness for future construction funding. So it would bring us to 100% design for the 3 early work packages. So package A, which is the northern side of the project, package B, which is the southern side of the project, and package C that starts toward into the center. And then it would carry us to the 30% design mark for the main construction package, which is the center. So that includes the center portion of I-5, it includes the highway cover and the local streets.
So the construction will be included in those dollars?
No, it's all design funding that would be included.
So all that pre-work that you all done with the prime contractors will cease to exist, even with this $43 million you're talking about?
Well, it'll cease to exist, go ahead.
No, it won't cease to exist, but it is gonna take longer for us to get to construction. So I think our original construction schedule was to start at the end of this year, the end of 2023. When we received a public comment on the supplemental environmental assessment, there were a lot of comments that we received, and I'll be talking about design refinements, but incorporating design refinements that we knew was gonna push us out of starting construction in 2023. Layering on now the financial reality, we know that we're being pushed to as early as 2025 is what we're assuming for construction. That is assuming, though, that funding does become available, and so we're gonna, as we kind of extend this sort of first phase of the financial plan that Brendan's presenting tomorrow. That'll help us kind of tee off what the reality is in terms of construction going forward. So.
Well, I'm on the COAC, and this is all news to me. This is all news to me. I'm on the COAC. I've been fighting for this project for about 4 years now. And all of a sudden we get up to this point and we hear that the funding is in jeopardy. You guys have known about this for quite some time. Why wouldn't you share that with us? Because it sounds like to me, you're trying to get us now to come to the table at the ODOT, the directors meeting and ask for support for y'all's $43 million. But the main line, the employment piece, the community piece that would empower people to get jobs and businesses is still in jeopardy. Is that not true?
That's why your voice is so important, James.
No, come on. I'm asking you why you guys are waiting till the last minute to tell us.
Well, yeah, and this thing just got inked and put out yesterday. So it hasn't been, we knew that we were on, I mean, we've been pretty transparent that we did not have the dollars for this project, and we let everyone know. As far as moving into construction next year, we are reliant on tolling to help to get us construction. We're having to delay that for lots of reasons that that project's at risk. So it isn't something that we've known.
So is the Albina Vision, y'all know about that? Y'all know anything about this? And you're asking them to be partners with us and come to the table with us as a part of this whole group here? I'm confused because I thought the governor had worked out a deal in which we were collaborating with all these community partners to be all in line with the.
I was a former governor, that was Governor Brown. So, we're suffering from the R and the D syndrome. I messaged Megan today, and, I kept it brief because it's just not good to communicate. So message someone else. And I'm hopeful that they have some conversation down south. This is a state that has bragged that we have a budget surplus. I don't know how much access transportation has to the surplus money. But I will say this. I don't live in Wilsonville. I don't care about the Young Bridge, right? 205 is almost too big anywhere. And everyone's known tolling and gas taxes are going to be what's relied upon for a long time. I'm disappointed if there is a representative from the governor's office. I am disappointed that the slowdown order was issued in such a way that it would impact this project. Because it's not just 12 months. If we can't turn a shovel in 23, it's gonna be 25, 26. It'll be 27, 28 before a track road gets out there and pulls up anything, right? This, Mr. Finn, this is not about you or Megan. If you're listening from the governor's office, this is not fair. We have an expectation to see you at this table. Don't send spoiled fruit as the meal served by someone that you can hide behind. This is not right. It is not okay. We know we have prime contractors. They're building their business and forecasting, and now it's another 24 months off. It's not okay. If you say anything to the Transportation Commission, tell them it's not okay. And we don't use the Boone Bridge. Well, maybe one person does, but you know, you can take 99. So I'm just not at home with it. I don't care about toll. It's okay. Hell, the old interstate bridge got toll booth in it. You know, so I just don't understand why anyone would think you could come here with 2 peanuts and 3 cups and have us go, yeah, that one. It's not good. It's not good. It affects my trust.
Right.
If I had to go explain this to the individual person on the street, their answer would be, well, you can't trust those blankety blanks anyway. This is all a bunch of blankety blank, and only a few people are going to benefit. That's what we're facing when we go, and people ask us, hey, what's going on with that? I know you're sitting here, I know you're sitting there. You know, as I understand it, the COAC's not even going to exist. So, you know, this is like worst papers.
Yeah. And how do you remove the politics out of it? I mean, there was, you know, not a leader who actually went on television to complain about the toll and how it would impact their neighborhood. I don't have an issue with that. My issue, right, these were white neighborhoods. Right. They were white neighborhoods, and these were white political leaders in those adjacent cities to the toll. And it sounds like to me, big politics here. And that one community at least has the perception that they win, and another community doesn't win. It's interesting to me how some groups of people can cry and they get heard. And a process gets paused for 2 years. Other communities cry. And the process continues. I'm with Mr. Modique on this. It's a lot of trust now. And I don't have a problem with someone saying we're going to pause it. I have an issue with the explanation. As if when this process first started, we did not know that there would be some issues with tolling. We knew that from the beginning. So now my question is, and here's where I will digress, because we got a new administration in place. At the end of the day, I mean, the problem is, I think, yeah, my heart goes out to you. me, you're here, you know, representing. But, at the end of the day, yeah, it just doesn't leave a very good taste in my mouth that you're not here explaining this to us and not the decision makers. I think the decision makers owe it to explain and to offer dialogue and conversation about not just the explanation, but about the context of their explanation and their philosophical ideology for why they did what they did. That, to me, would be helpful. And maybe it's a good reason. I'm not saying it's not, because I don't know what it is. But if that can happen, that would be kind of nice. Thank you so much. I yield back to you, my great colleague.
Yeah. I know you said not personal, and I don't take, because we're friends and I've known you for years. But I take it personally that I did come to many of you and we asked you to trust. And we said we want to establish trust and we want to,
Well, you got put in the trick bag.
we want to bring the truth.
Right.
You got put in the trick bag. And I'm insulted by that. Because they found the only emissary they could come be with us. And then they put you in the trick bag. Banking on, hey, you know, he's just gonna move on with his privilege. We're gonna be sitting here pounding the table some more over something that shouldn't have been taken in the first place. And then the big promise, you're gonna get it back, now it's taken again.
I do want to include, because I just want to make sure the full picture is there as well, is that we will, part of what I'll be presenting tomorrow is that we are going to put on hold indefinitely. One of the projects that was wanted by that community in Clackamas County, the phase 2 of I-205, which is to add another lane and bridge project there at the 12th Bridge. So I just wanted to provide that as context. It doesn't go to any kind of.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. But you know, we travel these highways, so we know how wonderful I-205 is and all the room that's left post original construction for all this expansion. And you know, that community will get theirs too. But they're gonna have to wait. And again, Governor Kotek, it's a huge disappointment, huge.
Randy, what did you expect when you sat here around there? When you delivered that message, what did you expect? What's the response?
Well, I mean, I promised you all, and Erica and Dr. Holt, who I asked to come into this space and help us 3 years ago, that we would be truthful, and that we would show up and not try to give you some talking point or something else. I do think, you know, I'm not trying to cover for anybody, but that the governor wants this to get to a good place and figure it out. Is there regional dynamics at place? You know, I can't dismiss that or say that that's not the case. I was before a bunch of, earlier this week, there's a regional toll advisory committee that's elected officials from those communities and, you know, it's not as difficult as this conversation, but,
you know, this is why I sit at these tables for a bigger or lesser degree. I may not be much of a dreamer. I got some dreaming in me, but reality is where I live most of the time. And you know, in trying to somehow navigate bullshit, it's sometimes a necessary demeanor you got to have, you know? But you know, with the people sitting in this room, if the perception was that we was going to achieve an outcome such as the one that we just witnessed, then how come the perception of us to defend a position in the here and now is so difficult for us to arrive to? The question that I'm having is, what's the muscle in this room as a response to us being pushed around? Okay, because for far too long, we've been passive recipients of this kind of stuff. So where do we go and what do we begin to do to organize ourselves to arrive, because y'all just brought a dream and a vision. Y'all will allow another vision to be deferred in our lifetime? I got some issues with that part of it. So if we're gonna start looking at something, and this is where Winter, you and Mike could win my alliance again, is y'all have some games coming into this. It's a perfect opportunity. If y'all got any more than tricks in your bag, I would love to see if y'all can help us navigate this. And the other part of that is the question that I'm having about that 40 million that y'all are asking for. Okay, does that 40 million keep y'all in existence as ODOT, or does it keep our community moving toward the vision and the goal?
The latter. I mean, so, and that's what was really important to Megan and I as we approached our commission, who, you know, thinks about the entire state, the importance as we go to every one of those meetings and tell them what we're trying to do to build trust in this community, is that we need to keep this going. This can't be what happened to the Columbia River crossing. Now, I'm really happy that the Interstate Bridge got funding in the legislature. That's great. This project is generational, and we can't stop the momentum. It would be easy, I think, for some to say, you don't have the funding for construction. But neither did Interstate Bridge 3 years ago. So there's some strategy to be had. There's some voices to be heard, so we can get there. We've come along, I think we've come a long way on the journey to get to the point where we are today in collaboration with partners and members of the community.
But honestly, Brent, you're not hearing us. This is not about you.
Yeah.
It's not about you. This is about
the bigger picture.
This is about the culture of Oregon.
Right.
It's about how they turn us over every time.
Sound like a uniting factor, to be honest.
You know, and so we worked hard with APT. They're here tonight as a testimony to the hard work we put in to try to build a relationship, and then you all shit them. That's the bottom line. And really, somebody needs to get in the governor's ear, i.e., into that group over there. You all profess power in this community. We as a body profess power. I'm certainly using the little platform I got to make a noise. That how do we fund the interstate bridge? I mean, I know they were doing it out there, but we haven't been through all this. We haven't even begun to talk about the interstate bridge and the funding and all the work we put in to try to get the right contractor to do the right thing for the right reasons at the right time, all down the drain. And where in the hell is our federal partners on this?
Well, interstate crossing is funded by 2 states and 2 federal delegations. That's the voice for that. You know, I mean, I as really laid back as my ears are on this, you know I do understand some of this reality, but it is just a truck full of junk for us right now. There's no money to purchase property. There's no right-of-way acquisition for how long? You know, so it all has this big tumbling effect there. You know, I don't know how we recover, you know?
Well, I don't linger in misery, I know that. But what I am willing to do is, like I said, is to somehow or another organize some kind of agenda to go and address these things. I'm not gonna sit here and cry with it. I'm ready to dance on your chest, B. But if we can organize some kind of counter response, I'm open to that. You know, but all this suffering and consulting in misery, I don't do that. You know, I get on with the business of getting on with the game.
How did we get Governor Brown to come to town?
It's very simple. We go knock on the door.
I mean,
Kotek.
in the past, how did we get Governor Brown to come here and listen and create a response. I mean, Governor Kotek's gonna have to do the same thing. Or
Let's
was
just
that a
ask.
failed endeavor?
Let's just ask. I got it here, I can call down there and ask for that. You know, I mean, but I still think Brandon and them should take some responsibility to navigate us into that door. You know, I don't think that they should be passive recipients of that information neither, because you got just as much of responsibility to this relationship as we got to you. So, you know, man, again, it's time to grow a set, B. You know, step to the plate. You should be representing around here. If you want to displace all these relationships you helped develop, you're gonna be a signature on that sheet with her. You know, if I was you, I'd go in that office with your staff and with the director, and y'all tell them what you've established right here, and somehow or another gain some kind of opening for us to navigate through that door for the rest of the way. You know, and let us do the dance that we need to do, if that's what's necessary here.
And it's not just Governor Kotek.
It's all of them
It's the
down.
Senate President and the House Speaker.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Signed off and co-signed it.
But I can tell you this, that white backlash is starting to get real. And I've said this 2 or 3 years ago, they coming to get what they gave us. You know, if you ain't got it glued down or held down, they gonna come get it back. So on the national, so in Oregon ain't no different. So at some point in time, we're gonna have to dig in and stand for what we stand for, or we gonna be victims of that condition over and over and over. And I'm not trying to do that dance.
Appreciate everyone's comments. I want to be sensitive. I realized that this would be a topic that we needed to talk through. I knew we wouldn't be able to talk through it in the time that we had. One of the reasons that we made the shift in the agenda, we wanted to honor the collaboration, but we knew that this was something important. I appreciate the transparency and realize that, again, there are some other things at work here. Sounds like some action items in regards to making sure that our voice is heard and that the community is able to voice to those powers that be in regards to what this means and the shifts and the effects, again, on a community that has already been devastated. We are at 5:57. I know that we had a number of other things to get to. We wanted to talk a bit about the SEA refinements and to try to close out that process, what Brendan mentioned in regards to, we feel like we're at a good place in regards to what the design refinements are in response to those SEA comments and our collective work together. We also wanted to talk a bit about the charter, but I believe that in light of where we are, this is a good place for us to pause and to thank you all for leaning in here. I think that this is a great opportunity for mobilization. We appreciate Brendan, Megan, you all's leverage or help with maybe helping us facilitate that community conversation at a higher level, however we might be able to do that. And partnership and collaboration with those in this room to think about what that response could be. So with that.
Did we answer your question, Mr. Finnan?
Yes.
Do you feel as though you have the permission to go in front of the commission tomorrow and say, the table supports to ask for the 43 million?
Well, I think where I want to start with them is just
yeah, you got it right.
I need to gather my thoughts right now.
But you know the one that you're thinking about. Yeah, because you know they threw you in a hot spot.
And I apologize that I have to do a random thing.
All right. Understand your motion.
Indeed.
A commitment to that we'll make sure to communicate what's happening tomorrow back to the HAAB, because this is not a one and done conversation. This is an ongoing conversation.
Indeed.
Okay. I just want to make sure that Brendan got his question answered. And first approach the table.
Well, Yeah, I think I also want to say that there's a disappointment that we're not on the schedule to start construction.
Sure.
Yeah.
We're asking,
Absolutely.
I'll just,
I will say what I heard, and then you all can correct me if I'm wrong. This community is not willing to lay down without a fight. If that $44 million helps us to move the design to a place where we can get this construction, it sounds like you have the support there. That is a fuel for you. I think there's also reality in the disappointment in this community. And I think that that can be relayed in a way that still doesn't jeopardize what you have to say. But the OTC needs to know that. I think that that's important and appreciate your willingness to lean in there and to share that. But this is not a one and done. Yeah.
Hey, Brenda, no, this don't fall. I mean,
I know.
we get it, and I've been in your position several times. I get you, understand you. I appreciate your courage and your bravery for you. But at the end of the day, right now, you are our conduit. Right, you have to take the message back to. And other than that, let's sleep well tonight. You didn't do this, it was already in the print and newspaper about what they did. Right? And I appreciate your loyalty, appreciate it. Don't get me wrong, man. And again, I don't think any of this was directed at you.
no,
And I think we made that very clear. You didn't break our trust. Your big boss broke our trust. As well as the House Majority Leader and the Senate President. Those three individuals broke our trust. It's not on you.
well, like I said, appreciate everyone at this table and the work that you've done.
Yeah. And down my mind, we going forward.
Indeed, indeed. With that, you all, thank you. I understand, like Mr. Alexander started out, sometimes family conversations are difficult, but hopefully this fuels us to move forward. Thank you to you all. To you online, thank you. Everyone have a good evening and we will be in touch. Thank you.
You're a punch, man.